Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests and participants. Welcome to today's event, Global ESG Trends and System Thinking, Insights from Case Studies across UK, Europe, and Australasia. This is Levine from Matters Academy, which is the organizer of today's event. Before the event starts, we would like to take this opportunity to thank you all the supporting organizations and HKUI Group to provide this beautiful venue and all the arrangements. Thank you. Please help yourself and enjoy the coffee, tea, and refreshments. In today's event, you will be able to gain insights from compelling case studies showcasing how system thinking enables effective ESG integration and sustainable business practices. We will explore the examples from different regions, illustrating the impact of holistic systems-based approaches. To kickstart this event, we have the privilege of hosting a keynote speech by a true visionary in the field, Mr. Martin Rich. Mr. Rich is the co-founder and executive director of the FutureFit Foundation. Following Mr. Rich's keynote speech, we will engage in provoking panel discussion around the topic global ESG trends and systems thinking, opportunities and challenges for businesses. Guiding us through this insightful conversation will be our moderator, Mr. Adrian Tran, the Director of the Executive Education at HKU Business School. We have also gathered a panel of distinguished experts, each bringing a unique perspective to the table, including Mr. Merlin Lau, the Head of Policy and Research at the Business Environment Council, Ms. Lumi Hao, the Business Development Lead at Oliver, and last but not least, Ms. Julian Oliger, the Head of Sustainability Business, Asia Pacific, and Strider Electric. I'm sure their sharings and perspectives will undoubtedly provide us valuable insights. After each section, there will be a short Q&A section for everyone to raise your questions to our honorable speakers. We hope you will find this event informative and engaging. Without further ado, may I please welcome Mr. Martin Rich. Thank you.
Thank you. Wonderful. Can you all hear me okay? Is that coming through? Yep. Fantastic. I'm getting thumbs up. Wonderful. My clicker. Well, firstly, it's a wonderful privilege to be here. So thank you to all of you who've come in person today, and indeed to those who are watching live on stream as well, or maybe watching on the catch up. And of course, very big thanks to Mr. Adrian Chan and everybody at HKU here for the invitation. It's greatly appreciated. So thank you very much indeed. And I hope you find the next hour challenging. I want to give you some provocative thoughts. I want to challenge maybe some of the preconceptions you have. But I also want to give you some case studies, some examples, again, things to challenge and to encourage you about the trends that we're seeing. As Levine said, we'll be taking some questions at the end. I've got a big clock there. I think I'm going to 1 o'clock. Is that okay? So I'll try and make sure we have time for that. But do think, please, of some questions as we go through, and I will do my very best to answer those. So I press the clicker and nothing happens. I will press the clicker again. There we go. Fantastic. So that's the talk. We know what that one. So firstly, what is FutureFit? My organization, we're a non-profit based in London, but with a community around the world of people using our methodology. We're a non-profit. This is our vision. A FutureFit society protects the possibility humans and other life can flourish on Earth forever by being environmentally restorative, socially just, economically inclusive. That's the type of future that we're trying to create. And over the next half an hour or so, I'm going to unpack that a little bit, and we'll think about what that means. But I'm going to start with a bit of a challenge. And this is a diagram and some thinking taken from an organization, another nonprofit called Rethinking Humanity is the publication. Rethink X is the organization. This is a fantastic document. I highly recommend it to you. If you just Google Rethinking Humanity. It's a 90-page document, free to download. Highly recommend you read it. But it tells us about the fact that we are facing an existential choice as humanity. This is not a light topic. And we often think about, oh, what should business do to be a little bit better? What should the financial world do? Should we compromise returns? All of these types of challenges. Now, they're valid questions, but they are second-order questions to the fact that the pathway we are on today cannot continue. We face a very real choice. Wherever in the world we exist, whatever our experience, whatever our background, whatever our political and social views, whatever they may be, we face a very, very clear choice. I'm probably going to annoy the cameras here if I wander off the camera and point at the screen. But we can either have a breakthrough to a fantastic, enlightened future, or we face a very real risk of societal collapse. The idea that we can sort of somehow carry on as normal for the next 20, 30, 40, 50 years, that business as usual, but done a little bit better, is nonsense. It cannot happen. And I will have that argument with anybody in the room, so long as we start from the premise that if you disagree with me on that, you're wrong and I'm right. Okay, we cannot continue along this pathway. We are seeking ever-growing exponential financial return and growth on a finite planet. Hands up, anybody who's ever studied mathematics in some form? Yeah, at least 2/3 of the room. You will all know that if you have exponential growth, it goes up and up and up and up and up. If you are on a finite world, at some point you are going to explode through the boundaries. It is a mathematical improbability as well as a realistic one. We live on a finite planet. The only thing we get new every day is sunlight. At least you get lots of it here. I come from the UK. We don't get very much sunlight in the UK, but you have a lot of it. That's all we get new. Everything else is the finite particles around us. That's all we have to use. And sadly, we got very good at taking them, using them, disposing of them, and making them useless. There are lots and lots of very negative things that are unfortunately taking us the wrong way. Society, we're already beginning to see challenges through the environmental changes, the weather patterns changing, constant news of floods, terrible rainfall in one part of the world, and then ridiculous fires and dryness in other parts of the world. Right now, the media is full of the latest tragic fires in Hawaii, seem to have claimed well over 100 lives. Not the first this year. Sadly, it will not be the last this year. Some parts of the world, too much water. Other parts of the world, not enough water. Climate change is becoming very, very real. Social unrest and inequality as people are struggling to know how to survive in an economic climate where inflation is going through the roof. We see this all around the world. Inequality and injustice continuing to grow. Society is absolutely on the verge of collapse. And where can we go with that? Because we're so interconnected now as people. We're so reliant on each other. I know for a fact that the community that I live in the UK, if our supply chains stop, if Tesco's or whatever supermarkets stop providing food, none of the people I live around can grow their own food and survive for long. Society will break down very, very quickly. My guess is it would be the same here. But the good news is there is so much potential, so much opportunity to break through. We know what a lot of the solutions for a sustainable future look like. The breakthroughs in technology that we're seeing are incredible. We're only beginning to scratch the surface of the capability of AI. Hands up if you've used ChatGPT or some version of that. Isn't it fun? It's amazing. Terrifying, but it's also amazing. Just imagine where we can start to go with things like this. A world of possibilities in front of us. The ability to have a future where energy, food, knowledge are at our fingertips, are effectively free and available. Just imagine if people were not scrabbling every day for energy and knowledge and food and had the ability to flourish as themselves because they weren't worried about those daily needs. That's a possible future. We kind of know how to get there. The question is, do we want to get there? Do we have the desire to come and break through to this exciting new future? Or are we going to sit there and allow the pressures of the day-to-day to drag us down into societal collapse? Personally, I don't want to be down there. That's bad. It's very unpleasant. If you have children, it's very, very bad. I want to try and make that happen. That's what I spend my life doing. That's why I'm here talking to you guys today. That's why I talk to people around the world about this. And I hope ultimately you will agree that this is the journey we should be on. Maybe many of you are already on that journey, in which case, fantastic. Hello, fellow travelers. It's lovely to be with you. So this is the world where we are today, this exponential growth, these constant curves, everything going up from emissions to the number of people on the planet, to the number of McDonald's on the corner of every high street for some reason. So how do we respond to these issues? How do we move society from where it is today to where we want it to be? Well, I love to think about this a little bit as a seesaw, as a pendulum. If we want to move society from there to there, we want to be leaning down on this side of the lever, right? We want to be pushing it up. The challenge we've got is everything that we do today, even our best practice, is pushing on the wrong side of that pivot point. All we're doing by reducing carbon emissions a little bit, trying to be better with our EDI issues, trying to use less water, whatever it might be, is we're moving that towards this way a little bit, but it just means we're putting less pressure on the wrong side of the pivot. Well, obviously that's slightly better, but it's still on the wrong side. And this diagram actually is a little bit wrong because this isn't a solid base. It's not likely we can keep pushing on the other side and it's not going to break. That's actually very soft and squishy. If we keep pushing too far on that side, we will just drop down through the floor, the seesaw flies over and everything collapses. Where we need to get to as a minimum then is that the pressure, the negative impacts of what we're doing through our business, through the way we live, is at worst leaning on that pivot point. It's what we call the break-even goals. I'll come back to this language in my talk, so don't worry about it too much. But it's about not doing any harm. Even if we get to the point of not doing any harm, all we're doing is not making it worse. Even if you could get your business to the point of not doing any harm, which, by the way, is incredibly hard, and there are virtually no businesses in the world today who are able to do it or are doing it. Even if we got there, we're not changing anything. We're just not making it worse. So we also need to be thinking about how do we cancel out and reverse the negative impacts of things that we've done in the past? How do we start to pull on this side of the lever whilst we're pulling ourselves up and doing less harm? How do we start to think about what is the purpose? What is the reason for our business to exist? What are we bringing to planet and society? Why does society want us to succeed financially as a business? What is it that we're doing that is helping the whole of society move in this right direction? Even more, what are we doing to change the underlying drivers, the underlying root causes of negative impact? How are we starting to cancel those out and challenging? As you will all know, if you're pushing on the end of this, you need to push less hard the further away you are. So the more that we can change the way that the system works, that the system drivers work, actually the less pressure that we need to put on. It's easier if we're pushing out here than if we're pushing here. How do we do that? How do you do that within your organization? How do you have that greater systemic influence within your organization? Well, part of the answer is to change our mindset in terms of what we think of as value creation. You'll all be very familiar with this model, shareholder value, where we externalize the negative impacts on planet and society, and we internalize purely the financial profit to the business. That's how we've grown the world for about the last 150 years or so. The problem is the natural consequence of that model is what we have today. Because the more and more you do it, the more you try and pull the value and the dollar into the company, the more you are forced to externalize the negative impact. So the worse the impact becomes. And we end up reaping what we have sown. It's no surprise we've ended up here. It's the consequence of this model. Now, in the 1990s and the 2000s, we sort of moved forward a little bit, and this concept of shared value came along. Which I imagine, again, a lot of you are familiar with the concept, where we started to overlap these circles. And we said business sometimes adds value in these places. This is where we're doing good. But we're still doing harm as well. And how do you trade off those bits? If I do good in one part of the world, but I do harm in another part of the world, is that okay? If I do 1 unit of good here and 1 unit of bad there, is that okay? If I give Levine a hug, but I punch Andy, is that okay? No, of course not. On average, they cancel out, but it's no good. We've got to think about what does it mean to only be doing a good, positive, reinforcing action across all of these things everywhere. In other words, we need to move to this concept that FutureFit talks about of system value, where we sit within the defined conditions of the environment and society. A flourishing business sat within a flourishing society, sat within a flourishing environment. Only if we get to these conditions can we actually hope to make progress towards a flourishing future, really see genuine progress towards things like the Sustainable Development Goals. The other two models do not allow for that to happen. Only if we move to this type of an approach can we do that. Now, those of you who've studied business in some form will be familiar with these 5 forces, Porter's 5 forces, created in the 1970s. Fantastic description of how business pressure operates. They're good, they're right, they absolutely still work. The problem is when they were created, the pressures that we have around us today were not the same. They were there, but they were smaller. They weren't as well recognized. We have environmental, societal, and indeed technological pressures bearing down on businesses today that, again, simply weren't there 40, 50 years ago. So those Porter's 5 forces still absolutely work and are valid. We like to say, actually, there are now 8 forces. We call the FutureFit 8 forces, Porter's 5 and these 3. We're going to take a quick look at each of these. I'll give you some case studies from around the region as we look at each one as well. So the environmental context, you'll be familiar with these. I'm not going to read all of those out. But how do we start to address those challenges at the heart of our business? So the first example I want to talk about is this company, Better Energy, based in Denmark. So it's a European company. And they're a solar, grid-level solar installer. And this organization is one of the first in Europe to have produced a fully integrated FutureFit report, which we're very delighted about. So when it comes to talking about how they are making progress, they use the FutureFit framework to talk about what issues environmentally, socially, and governmentally they are tackling, how they are doing, what progress they are making, fully integrated into their financial report. But this is an organization that it's, at its heart has embedded this transformation. Whoops, we're going, go back. There we go. It's embedded this idea of being a true system value creating company at its very heart. I was delighted that the lady who runs the FutureFit program within the organization was out in the field up in northern Denmark, going to one of the sites where they were starting to install all of the solar panels, and one of the engineers there, as she went up and introduced herself to him, turned around and he went, "Oh, you're the FutureFit lady." And it was like, wow, That's an organization that is taking sustainability, to use the word, seriously. The engineer on the ground, the guy there with the spanner and the toolkit in his hand, he knows that he's working for a company. This is jumping ahead on its own. Can we stop it jumping ahead, please? That guy knew that this company was serious about sustainability, and he knew that there were some people responsible, and he was delighted that she'd come out onto the site to help him understand what to do. And they were talking about waste on the site, so how to minimize waste that was being created so they could get that down to zero, ideally, looking at how the installation is put together. So when it comes to the end of life, how can they think about recycling, the circularity of the products that they're using? We all know that, of course, solar panels are brilliant, but they have challenges in terms of the supply chain and in terms of the end of life. So they're looking at how they can change that. This company is trying to understand its supply chains better so that it can create materials and panels that indeed can be fully circular. Moving on, the presentation clearly wants me to move on. The societal context. How do we think about all of the challenges we've got around economic migration, the change in jobs as automation continues to grow? Again, we talked about AI briefly. What does that mean? Creation of new jobs, redundancy of old jobs. We've seen post the pandemic, right? The pandemic really changed work-life patterns. There's some change back to how things used to be, but not entirely. So how do we deal with all of these issues? Move to my next case study. This is a New Zealand-based company, THL, Tourism Holdings Limited. They produce fantastically beautiful photos like this simply because they're based in New Zealand and it's a fantastically beautiful country. But they do RV, recreational vehicle hire. So basically, if you want to travel around New Zealand for 2 weeks, or Australia, or America, or Canada and England, where they're also based, you might hire one of their vehicles to travel around. And this is an organization that has absolutely embedded FutureFit into the core of what they're doing. They want to be a truly sustainable business. Why? Because they realize that if they trash the beautiful environment that they're in, there's no New Zealand to go and visit. It's arguably enlightened self-interest. Now, of course, they want to protect it because they think it's beautiful and they love it. But they recognize that it's both an imperative morally to do this, but it's also a business imperative. So they've embraced FutureFit. They no longer see our methodology as something that's an add-on to the way they do business. The last time I was down there and I saw their chief exec, he said, we don't talk about using the FutureFit framework anymore. We talk about having a FutureFit mindset. Everything and everybody within that organization thinks in a FutureFit manner. We're trying to do everything we can in the right way. This is, I know you can't read it, I just put it on there to demonstrate, but this is their report showing how they're doing against the various goals and metrics within FutureFit, how they've changed over time, and where they've still got things that they need to be working on, where they're doing really well, the green dots, where they've got challenges, big challenges, the red dots, oddly enough, procurement and their supply chain is a big challenge. But socially, I just wanted to touch on that bit. I do apologize that the slides are jumping around here. Socially, two big areas that they're focusing on. Firstly, within their organization themselves, their staff, how do they make sure that their employees are as motivated and able to flourish as is possible? And then for you as the customer, how do you engage with the local communities, with the wildlife, with the landscape that you are going to see? So how can you understand the culture, the history, the different views and outlooks on life that come from those peoples and their experiences? And then how can they regenerate? I guess you can't do anything whilst I'm in the middle of the presentation, can you? Sorry. The Waitomo Regenerative Project is an area, beautiful area, Maori-based land that needs regenerating. It's just become degenerated over time. They're working with the local population to figure out how they correctly rebuild the biodiversity, regenerate that landscape. So different ways of interacting socially as an organization going forward. So again, looking at that bigger picture, social context for where do they go to add value as an organization? Are they just an RV rental company? Or are they actually a company where the whole principle of creating value environmentally, not causing any harm through the emissions or whatever, through their supply chains, to adding the social value through the way they interact with the community, with their staff, and how they interact with you as their client to help you and educate you on the journey, as well as obviously having an amazing holiday and hopefully a fantastic time. What a brilliant coming together of factors. The third and final one, the technological context and challenges that we face. The world is moving so quickly in this regard. Within the next 5 years, I'm sure it will be utterly unimaginable again as to where technology is going. You know, it always amazes me. It was less than 15 years ago that Steve Jobs first waved one of these on a stage and said to us all, hey, there's this thing called the iPhone. Smartphones are going to change the future of the world. Oh, that's interesting. And now everybody's got one. Most people have got at least two. You spend your entire life dependent on these little devices, whether it's maps showing us where to go, or diaries, or games, or books, or whatever it is. Utterly changed life. Imagine how much quicker that's going to go. My third case study, back to the UK. Virgin Money Bank is a mid-sized bank in the UK. It was part of the bigger Virgin brand, so Virgin Atlantic you'll have heard of. It's now independent from that, but they're a commercial and retail mid-sized bank with a great client base of commercial borrowers. And they said, we want to make our commercial loan book basically greener. We want to be supporting organizations to change, but we don't want to just be doing, you know, a light touch thing. We want to show them what their challenges are and how they can improve. We want to educate them. But they said, but hang on, we're a bank. We don't really understand how to do this. So they reached out. Oh, they looked around the market, and then they reached out to us and said, we think your framework, FutureFit, you're the guys we want to come in and help us build a tool that's going to enable our clients to understand simply where they are today and how they can start taking steps in the right direction. So we built this app, which is available on mobile and also on the just through your PC at home for the businesses. Unfortunately, we've tried to. I would give you the link. Unfortunately, it doesn't work in Asia, so I could tell you where it is. You could download it, but it won't work. So you'll just have to trust me. It's very cool. But we are through this trip already. We're having conversations with at least one bank in Hong Kong. So I'm quite optimistic that within the next 6 months, 9 months or so, actually there'll be a bank here launching a similar tool. Again, question and answer based. So the company going through it, the CEO doesn't need to be a sustainability expert. They just answer yes and no questions about what they do. It uses the FutureFit methodology quietly in the background, and then it pops up simple steps that the organizations can start moving in the right direction. Why is the bank doing this? Well, partly because it's a good thing to do, and the bank wants to position itself in a very positive light. But it's also, again, enlightened self-interest, right? This is risk management. You want to be putting your money to work in businesses who are taking these things seriously, because they're going to be better positioned to flourish in the future. So as the bank, you want to be lending to those businesses. That's better for you. It's also going to be better for your regulatory reporting. It's going to be better for your reporting to your investors. And it's a good thing to do. That's kind of win, 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 win. Why wouldn't you want to be pursuing this type of approach? So these are all of the factors that come together and help us to think about enriching our systems intelligence as businesses? How are we operating in this ever-changing space? So what does a truly regenerative future look like? Our framework, the business benchmark, which is available online. I'll show you the URL at the end. It's all free. We're a non-profit, so we give all of this away. We created this methodology over 10 years. We worked with experts around the world, universities, academics, systems experts, issue-specific experts, businesses, financial institutions, and we pulled this framework together to create our 7 properties of a regenerative business. You can read all of these. I won't read them out to you. That's what a truly regenerative business looks like. But actually, there's one missing. There's actually an 8th property which underpins all of this, which is that our social norms, our governance, and what we define as our pursuit of economic growth are in pursuit of these other things. Donella Meadows, the great systems thinker from the States, once said that the purpose of a system is what it does. In other words, a system generates the outputs that it's set up to achieve. Today, our social economic system does not pursue these things. Social equality, environmental change, positive environmental change. That's not the bottom line of economic growth. Economic growth is about the dollar. So that's what we get. Waste exists because waste not existing isn't part of the purpose of the system. Nor is social equality or the ability for people to live fulfilling lives. It's not what was designed as an output. So guess what? We don't get it. Again, we shouldn't be surprised by that. We just have to recognize it and say, okay, are we going to try and design a different system then? One that does pursue these things. And if we do that, how are we embedding those types of drivers into the root causes, the root principles of how we build our business? For the management consultants in the room, they'll be delighted to know that everything always comes down to a 2x2 grid. So this is our Johari square, okay? So we have negative and positive impacts, direct and indirect impacts. The first thing then, if we're to move in the right direction, every business needs to very quickly figure out and start eliminating its negative impacts. The good thing is our framework shows you what those are and tells you how to start going about it. Now, bear in mind, I can only give you the rules of the game. I'm not an expert in your business, I'm not an expert in your sector, and I'm certainly not the boss of your business. So you've got to work out what these rules of the game mean for your business. But what we can do is, and do, is give you the rules of the game. What does it mean to be not breaking those boundary conditions, not on the outside of the donut? For those of you who've read Kate Raworth's Economic Donut. Hands up, anybody who's read that book? Yeah, a handful of people. So that book is built on the same system science that our framework is built on. So that explains why, we explain how. So this is perfectly complementary to that. Here's our 23 break-even goals. There's your 8 properties. Here are the 23 goals. Don't worry, I haven't got time to go through all of them, so I'm not going to. We've mapped all of these to the SDGs as well. But these are the things you need to start doing as a business. How can your business work 100% from renewable energy? How can you make sure there are no greenhouse gases from your operations or from your products? How can you make sure that everybody is paid at least a living wage in your organization down through your supply chain? We come to procurement. How can you make sure that you pay the right tax at the right place in the right time? How can you go through doing all of those things to bring your business in line with not causing any harm? That's what a FutureFit business would ultimately look like. That's what businesses around the world are starting to commit to. Chances are you're doing some of this stuff already. How can you do more of it? How can you get where you need to be? So if anybody ever says to you at any point in the future, oh yeah, I hear about the sustainability stuff, but we don't know what sustainability really looks like, right? Slap them, tell them it's nonsense, and point them towards that and go, that's what a sustainable business looks like. And it's not because I say that, this is what we've put together with all these experts around the world. This is open source. If you think we've missed something, come and tell me afterwards. If you think something isn't right, come and tell me afterwards. And if you're right, we'll change it. These are the things that we need to be doing. Now, the good thing is there are 3 more squares left, and all of this is about the positive side of things. What can we be doing as businesses to take us truly to this flourishing future? Well, we can help others to reduce their negative impacts. So whilst I'm trying to reduce my negative impacts, I can help others to do the same. I can go beyond the break-even point and provide positive impact myself, or I can help try and amplify the positive impacts of others. So imagine if I'm stood here trying to reduce my negatives and increase my positives, and somebody stood next to me doing the same. It's like the 2 of us holding hands and helping each other. Now imagine if every business was doing that. Imagine if we could get everybody starting to think about the outputs from me being the inputs to you and starting to build this up. Somebody once said to me, it's amusing, there's an ex-investment banker talking about what's effectively a sustainability Ponzi scheme. And it's true. But it's like, how do we keep helping each other along on this journey? And again, we've created a whole suite of what we call our positive pursuits. Now, unlike the break-even goals, this isn't about doing all of these. This is about what is the 1 or 2 or 3 things as an organization that you are experts in. Where is your knowledge, your ability, your skills above and beyond everything else that is the value that you're bringing to society? So Schneider Electric, for example, perhaps it's up in the energy space would be the obvious sort of place to be looking, right? You might say, well, I see, water or natural resources, they're important, but probably not where the expertise lies. Where do you, as an organization, where can you be adding the value along this? Again, there's an infinite number of ways that could happen. But the break-even goals are the things you need to be doing all of or not doing. These, where is it? This is just a framing to help you think, where's that value and purpose that we're bringing to society? So now we go back to our seesaw, and hopefully now this makes a little bit more sense. And you're thinking, right, okay, so the break-even goals, all the things we talked about that you must or must not be doing, that just gets us to this pivot point. It means that we're not causing any harm anymore, but that's good, but it's a massively hard step. So how do you do more of these things? How do you do more of that value creation whilst reducing and eliminating those negative impacts? And bear in mind today, you've probably got a foot in both camps, right? You're balanced around this pivot point. You're probably sort of somewhere like that, right? You're doing a bit of good and you're doing a lot of harm. And the question is, how do you do the side shuffle? How do you end up over here? Yeah? So what does that look like for your organization? How can you make that happen? So as we come into land, if you take away nothing else from this talk, please do go and have a look at our framework. See if that's helpful for your thinking and where you are. Remember, it's positive pursuits, the things that enable you to think about how do you add value and purpose to society, and the break-even goals that show you the thresholds that you need to reach to not be doing harm. Think of us as a management tool for helping you to build a truly regenerative and sustainable business. And be able to use it as a framework to talk to your clients, to your financiers, to the regulators. We are not, just to be very clear, we're not a reporting framework. I'm not trying to compete here with ISSB and all of those other things. Those frameworks are there for reporting. The question is, what are you reporting? What are you talking about when you follow ISSB rules or EU taxonomy now? Well, you should be talking about your strategy. How are you making your business more sustainable? If you don't have a sustainability strategy, you have nothing to report on. Good news. Here's a free strategy. Take this, use it, become part of the transition to a truly regenerative future. That's what we are building globally. Part of my reason for being in the region for 2 weeks is we're launching the Asia Pacific Alliance of FutureFit users, led by our friends at ESG Matters right here in Hong Kong. So they're going to be pulling together all of our different partners in the region so that in the same time zone, all of you guys can sort of get together and talk about what does it mean to be applying this in a context that is truly genuine to you. I'm aware that this is a framework that we've built. with global partners. But at the end of the day, there's going to be some stuff in there that has a bias because where I am from in the world and where a lot of the people have input into are from. You need to take this and own it. What does it mean culturally, ethnically, in different parts of this region for a flourishing community and a flourishing society? That will mean different things here than it means to where I live in sunny north of London, or not so sunny, as I said earlier. But these are all of the countries where we've already got partners. I'm heading off in about 2 hours. We're going down to Malaysia, to KL, to meet some friends and talk at some conference there. And I'll be in Singapore, and I'll also be going to Japan. So we're starting to pull everybody together. And I would just be so excited and love it if people in this room, people listening online, would sort of look at this and go, yeah, I want to be a part of that movement. If you do, then please reach out to me or reach out to our friends here at ESG Matters and say, yeah, I'm interested in this. How can I join this movement? But if nothing else, as you leave today, be thinking, how can I be part of that transformation? I want to create a different socioeconomic system that takes us to a flourishing future. I want to be going up that curve to flourishing. I don't want to be going down that curve to collapse. What can I do at my organization this afternoon, next week? You might not be the CEO, you might not be the boss, you might not have the ability to change everything, but how can you start? How can you change things in your department? How can you bring people on the journey? How can you start to talk to the senior leadership and persuade them that things might need to change? For the younger members of the audience, those who are still studying and thinking about going on the journey, think about the organizations you're going to join. Do you want to join an organization that's serious about this stuff, or do you want to join one that isn't? I'll give you a clue. There's a correct answer to that, and it wasn't the second part. Join an organization that's serious about driving this change, because it's your future. So seriously, we'll be dead before the rest of you. So you guys, if you want to adopt this, all we can do is lay the foundations. That's what I'm trying to do for you to build upon. So I've got 2 minutes left to answer questions, which isn't enough. I've talked too much. But I hope that was challenging and fun. And let's take some questions for a couple of minutes. There's my contact details and our website. Thank you very much indeed.